Hey, what's up guys, Zokli, and I'm back taking a bit of a break from the gaming channel as I focus more on history, and I was actually in the process of moving, so I'm now settled down in a new place, and yeah, I figured I'd start to upload some more content onto this channel. Recently went back and have started to play a little bit more of Warhammer, was inspired by the recent Ever Chosen tournament, which was freaking awesome. So I went ahead and popped into a multiplayer battle. As you can see here, I am fielding Bretonnia. Against us, we have the dwarves in one corner. We have one of the latest DLC factions. It's going to be Nagarath here. And then finally, we have the Tomb Kings over in the distance. Let's put this on a little bit normal speed, a little bit faster there. So what have I brought? I have a couple of these blessed field trebuchets, 3 of them, just kind of sitting over here in the back, propped up with a nice little defensive structure behind me just to guard my flank. And if that weren't enough, I have some more halberds just defending there. Then I'm going to start to move out with some of my forces. I have a preliminary screen of infantry. On this flank, it's going to be a handful of men-at-arms with a men-at-arm with polearms, and a damsel with the lore of life with Alberic of Bordelot just watching over them. So I'm moving out and just securing a little bit of the streets in front of me. Over in the center, I have a little bit of a more heavy-hitting Bretonnian corps, 3 foot squires, and 3 peasant bowmen. And they're going to be having their flank anchored by this Grombrindal, can come in. And then I have 2 of these questing knights, again anti-infantry forces, which are going to be very nice for cleaning up troops across the battlefield. But then the main meat of my army, it's going to be 2 of these royal hippogriff knights, very heavy hitting, and are going to last to the late game and can do some pretty punishing cycle attacks and can be all over the battlefield. So my strategy here was Bretonnia is not ideally suited for this type of map, but I figured I'd bring it anyways just for some fun. And my strategy is, okay, how can I make this work in the close confines of a city? Well, the trebuchet corps there are going to be key. And then I wanted to have a couple more of the infantry that you're seeing here, and then some heavy cavalry up in the air just to own the air, and then to be able to have some opportunistic strikes. That's going to be my attack. I'm not going to be necessarily excelling in straight up fights, but I'm looking to maybe get preliminary damage and points at range, and then kind of deftly run around the city with my cavalry and flying monsters. Looks like the dwarves are going to be my first opponent coming off down the hill. Relatively scary to see them coming at me because they have a whole bunch of longbeards, thunderers, slayers, cannons. It's all pretty much equipped to counter me. Yeah, it's going to be very hard for me to take these guys out. So I'm starting to get some early pot shots, see what I can get done. And luckily, they are being funneled through these choke points. Yeah, my peasant bowmen are going to start to align themselves in the scrubland here. Oh. I'm going to try and fire, but it'll be a lucky shot to pierce that dwarven armor. Meanwhile, my questing knights are going to try and do a little bit of a feint there. Force the dwarves back because they were starting to come in with some of their thunderers a little bit too early, so I'm forcing them to kind of check their approach, and all the while just buy time for me to do a bit more damage. This is going to skyrocket me in terms of the points, so I'm getting a lot of early damage on here against these thunderers, but he's eating up a lot of my fire. Meanwhile, this flank, as he pushes forward with the slayers, these guys are unarmored, so I figured, hey, that's a pretty good target for my peasant bowmen. I'm going to start to take out these renowned warriors just with peasants. This is going pretty well, and again, I'm going to have to force my opponent to check his approach. He would love to swarm me, but unfortunately, I'm able to kind of rebuff this. Although, as he does get into position here, I do have to fear the charge, so if he can brave the arrows and close the distance, he should be able to do a fair amount of damage to me, so I'm a little bit worried, which is why I move forward, and now I'm stutter-stepping back. And then they have the white dwarf himself, Grombrindal, going to be leading the left-hand approach of the dwarves. Pretty punishing as they come in. Yeah, the slayers are going to be forced back, and they're going to let their more armored brethren commit to that fight. I'm going to fly over with the Royal Hippogriff Knights, just going to do a threat towards his cannons that are trying to deploy up here on the hill, and they can do a lot of damage on my forces. So what I'm hoping to do is land maybe an opportunistic strike on these guys, and even if he doesn't, you know, even if I can't get in these guys, it'll force him at least to pull back with some of his slayers and do something to redeploy, and then I can redirect and maybe hit these thunderers. So it's all just a slow kiting game, and I'm waiting to knock him about with these questing knights if anything gets too exposed. But these are all longbeards, which have charged defense, especially if they stand still and braced. I'm not getting through this. So yeah, just letting my range units rake in the kills. Meanwhile, in the distance here, I am perhaps looking at a flanking attack from the Tomb Kings, Sphinx, various war constructs lining up here. So I've pulled back a little bit from my exposed position. But it looks like the enemy are going to be facing off here. It's going to be Nagaraith with their Sisters of Avalorn, just going to be holding down the choke points. Handmaiden of the Everqueen. And yeah, they're hoping to do some good damage, but unfortunately they're being outranged by some of these Ushapti with great bows, tearing apart these dense formations. Now he does have an Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower, which can try and even the odds, but he's having a bit of a trouble there. Yeah, so we'll see how this turns out. But slowly they're going to start to creep up in the points. Let's get back to my fight. So there you go. I feigned over here, forced his Slayers back, and now I'm going to try and strike at some of his other forces. One of my units, one of the Hippogriffs, going to land and neutralize these Iron Drakes. So luckily the Dwarves have been a bit discombobulated, I can say, in their assault, completely leaving their guys unprotected. So I'm going to now feast on their flesh. But there is a single Slayer unit left remaining. And take a look at this. Even though I have like half the Dwarven army kind of caught unawares and on the run and like a disturbed anthill, with what they have left, I mean, it's just, you know, 5 infantry and a lord engaging. That is enough to scare off my force. So I'm forced to pull back. And what I'm going to do now is activate the cavalry. So the best thing to do here is launch against these hammers while they're unbraced. Finally, they do brace there at the last minute, but I needed to stem this push a little bit. So bringing them down almost to half strength, Grombrindal, of course ignoring that, pouring right through. And now I can get my foot squires in. Similar charge over here against these Longbeards. They did brace at the last minute. But now I have foot squires, etc. committed. And these are relatively elite units, at least in Bretonnia's side of things. So it should be enough to hold these guys down. If I can get these elite units from the Dwarves down to at least, you know, a half or third health, then the foot squires should be able to clean them up. But there's a lot of units in the back starting to deploy. I've gotten more kills and more points back here, but unfortunately my Hippogriff Knights are getting tied down by now the reinforcing Slayers. Rampaging around, the Giant Slayers as well, going to be doing punishing damage against me. Can't stay committed for too long, but I do want to make sure that I do as much damage to some of these Thunders as possible. My Bowmen also going to be firing into this mass of Slayers. Totally unarmored. That's a pretty scary blob that he is going on. And then we're going to come back in with my Lord, Hammer and Anvil, this infantry line, and try and help my Foot Squires hold strong. Cavalry and everything, these guys have been brought super low, and these hammers have barely budged at all as the Foot Squires and the Grail Relic gets engaged. Grombrindal going to be helping to turn the tide. Meanwhile, all my support in the rear is trying to focus down on this big blob, and then I have my Damsel pulling back to try and heal up. The cannons over here are going to be a problem. They're starting to establish themselves, and take a look at this. They're going to start to fire into my Lord, bringing down Albric rather heavily here. But that's where my Hippogriff Knights are hopefully going to be able to be redeployed. And yeah, look at that. Full broadside from those cannons, bringing me down super low. Tons of damage there. At the same time, I am trying to get all sorts of magic spells on these guys, but they are tough cookies. Yeah, so here I go. Trying to shut down those cannons. And the main line is holding for now, but the Slayer blob, once it gets committed, should be able to be enough to push me up over the edge, and Grombrindal also going to be pushing me over the edge, so I don't have much to hold out on that front. Meanwhile, on this side, it looks like the Tomb Kings have crashed into the front lines here, leading with the Sphinx of Usekh. And it actually goes down immediately. Focus fire by 3 of these sisters, plus having to push through 2 spearman units, and that thing is out of commission. That gives, yeah, this faction a huge ton of points there. And I love the death animation on those constructs. But yeah, he's raking up a lot of points. Tomb Scorpions are going to fare a bit better with their animations. They seem to be able to penetrate through these ranks. I would push them straight through the archers. Over here, he's actually doing a fair amount of damage and a good job of crushing through the front lines. But unfortunately, these sisters with their lasers are shredding Cetra and all the other big constructs. Best to have kept them in the rear and maybe summon and maybe yeah, waited to be able to summon troops in the mix to disrupt that. But yeah, he loses both of his lords, feeding a ton of points to that player. And finally, yeah, I mean, he has a bunch of skeleton archers that could have picked away at that formation, and now they're going to be crumbling. So this looks like, yeah, it's pretty punishing for this Tomb King player, and he may be the first to be knocked out. And I think what happens is whoever wins this battle on my flank is probably going to face Nagarath here, and they'll have a fair amount of spearmen and Sisters of Avalorn still standing, which can be deadly, plus a mage with a Lore of Light. So he can still fend us off at a distance. Back on this front, I've been able to route, I should say, both of his cannon crews with some of my Royal Hippogriff Knights, the Slayer Blob continuing to pursue my guys with a vengeance there, so I have to disengage, but again, it's relieving pressure and allowing a nice big target for my trebuchets to fire upon. There we go, a couple shots landing in the mix. Now the Blessed Trebuchet isn't necessarily that necessary. It's better to have just the regular Trebuchet against unarmored units like this. I don't think the magic does too much, although I may be wrong. Let's see. Slayers. I can't gloss over their stats, but they may have a magic resistance. Yeah. But anyways, anything I can do to take out this blob is going to be very beneficial. Yeah, taking big chunks out of them. Unfortunately, there is another Dragonback Slayer unit over here, as I try and devour his gun line. And he has a gun blob here. But at least it's a fair amount of points in my back pocket there. And it relieves pressure on my front line, where I'm now having to stage a full-scale evacuation. He's pushed through with Grombrindal. He's killing my Grail Relic, and he had the reinforcements of the Peak Guard Hammers, who are not going down. I don't have much to counter them. In the center, I'm holding out somewhat better with the Foot Squires. Let's go ahead and watch a bit of this engagement. The Stunties versus these Great Swords. Pretty evenly matched combat here. I would like to land a strike in the rear. So I'm trying to angle for that with my Questing Knights. But I'm trying to hit these, maybe the Longbeards first. To try and free this up. I seize perhaps an opportunity here to knock these guys about. So my Questing Knights are going to go and threaten this formation first. And now just that little bit of me delaying and not choosing correctly. I should have landed a strike on this. Means that this is going to collapse, and in the future this blob here is going to collapse. So a little bit of a microlapse as I'm trying to move my other guys around. Yeah, and this is what I need. Actually, another thing I didn't mention with the Royal Hippogriff Knights is they have the ability to cause terror in units. So if I commit here for a little bit longer, I should get an automatic terror route on these Longbeards, which will help me definitely even up the odds in this main line. But yeah, Questing Knights rebuffed quite easily against these Dragonback Slayers, and unfortunately, the gunners here putting on punishing fire to my Hippogriff Knights. I may be able to heal them up with the Damsel with the Lore of Life. So she's been running around trying to heal up some units, trying to buff them, but to not much avail. And I'm going to call a bit of a retreat. Over on this front, Nagarath is cleaning up. Everything is committed into melee. These Tomb Scorpions doing a fair amount of damage, but now you're getting critical binding, and yeah, they're all starting to crumble across the front. So there goes Army of the Tomb Kings, not well suited for this type of engagement, at least with the composition. And yeah, the elves holding the line beautifully here. And they should be able to make it out of this fight with a fair amount of troops still left on their roster. Elithanar, pretty cool, just sitting in the back. See if he's going to notch a couple shots to try and take out those Ushabti. What the hell was he hit by? Wait, was that not Elithanar? Oh, I see, I see. That was the mirror image. Okay, I was really confused. Okay, yeah, that's why the banner was a little different. So actually, it looks like he may be taken out by these guys, which would be unfortunate. He needs to come and save his lore. This is a pretty critical piece of his army. Yeah, these Ushabti. Oh my god, how did that arrow come in from the side? Real trick shots being lobbed there. Okay, he's not taking super amounts of damage, so he oh, okay. There's a handmaiden trying to help out, which is pretty epic. But back to my side, my center has been cracked. The dwarves have punched right on through. And then my Royal Hippogriff Knights, trying to rear charge some of these units, are now faced with just the remaining troops, which is essentially a body of Slayers, a couple remaining Longbeards that I can maybe take out with my Pullmen-at-Arms. But unfortunately, anything I have still alive on this flank is going to be killed by the White Dwarf. Over here cracking skulls, destroying all of my trebuchet crew. And unfortunately, I think the cannons are still up and running. Yep. Yeah, these dwarves tenacious. Just a couple men left. Iron Drakes coming around, lugging their equipment and seeing off my men-at-arms that were trying to sneak attack these cannons. So it looks like the battle is going to go to the dwarves. I did come out a little bit better in the exchange in terms of points. But now if he can survive and then clean up the remaining forces, the dwarves are going to take the lead. So it's up to me to try and evacuate at this point, not feed any more points, and allow him to maybe even up with the elves, and then I'll maybe be able to come back in. So that's what I'm doing here. Backing off, letting him get a little bit sloppy, and then coming in with men-at-arms. We're forming to take out these guys, and hoping to be able to kill them. I dodge a couple of those Iron Drake shots, land in the cannons, take a little bit of a volley. Ugh, and it did rout me, unfortunately. So the crew are going to come in here and see these giant beasties off. But luckily, my men-at-arms are in here, and they should be enough to rout this force. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of kills. The dwarves are edging really close, and they should be able to beat me here. Yep, there you go. So they've passed me. So I need to rake up a couple more kills on these units. In the distance here, I've been forced to feed in a couple of my peasants, and these slayers are just going to have a field day with them. And I have another halberd force that's going to try and retreat Grombrindal, chasing them entirely off this side of the battlefield. Ooh, it looks like he got impaled by that halberd. That looked pretty brutal. I may be able to kill these guys off, but not before Grombrindal comes in here. Area of effect attacks, killing like 5-6 dudes. Let's actually zoom in on that. That's pretty cool. Okay, so we killed the slayers. Ooh, this is going to be hard. A couple of heads strewn across the ground, just lopping them off with every blow. And then the peak guard, I believe. Yeah, peak gate guard coming in and shattering those men-at-arms. But luckily, I mean, he kills some peasants and low-value troops. Doesn't cost me too much in terms of points, but any kills I get on slayers and various other high-tier units, especially the cannons back here, has eked me enough points to get back in the lead, so pretty happy about that. Then I'm going to start to heal up a little bit on my units with a wee bit of Earthblood. I'm pretty low on magic at this point, but every little bit here will count. I need to get these guys topped off because they're going to be the key to my late-game success. And I have another unit of archers, again on cleanup duty. Killing a couple of those artillery crew. I can't have any of them come back and seize the cannons. If they were to do so, a single shot from those cannons, if well placed, could probably be enough to shatter, any one of my units. So making sure to clean them up. And of course add a little bit to my scoreboard. And there you have it. So they're shattered. So we should be good there. And I'm going to go ahead and turn her out and perhaps reform and see if we can't win this fight. Somehow, the Tomb King still holding out, and in their last little burst of energy have been able to even up the odds there. Quite impressive. I think they may have killed a Lithanar, which got them a fair amount of points. And yeah, I guess the Tomb Guard here just being extremely resilient against these sisters. And unfortunately, it's bought enough time for the dwarves now to close into the rear. Had these sisters had enough perhaps play space to dodge out of the way of these dwarves, I mean, I think they could have easily neutralized all of these slayers. And then after that, it's a matter of just kiting some of these weak Longbeards. And I believe the sisters do have armor-piercing missiles. Yeah, so had they been able to disengage, I think he could have easily taken this. So that's what I'm counting on, for the battle to go back in the favor of Nagaraith, for them to come up a little bit closer and knock out the dwarves. But here we're all neck and neck at 15k points. The dwarves getting some nice, easy pickups there. But again, he's getting a little bit sloppy here, which is going to be to my advantage. So this is where the mobility and agility of these Hippogriff Knights is going to come in handy. Flying over the peaks of these buildings, and then going to come down and just land amongst these pretty beefy troops. There's still one here with good health. So I got to be very careful not to let them get a single volley off. So I have 3 different units here, each tasked to target a separate unit, so they can't get any volleys off. And it looks like it's working out pretty well. So there we go, pretty cool. Stripping away 3 extra units from that Dwarven roster. at virtually no cost, although I am wavering on a nice edge there of my morale. Come back around and take out these Thunderers. Grombrindal has popped Unbreakable on them, hoping that maybe they can get a couple volleys, but it looks like even that doesn't work, as now they go ahead and break. Yeah, that Terrified effect being super helpful for me, especially in the late game, and the Halberds finding the courage now to kill these Thunderers. Let's take a look at that scoreboard. So it looks like I've dropped to 3rd here, so I'm going to have to be very opportunistic with my final engagement. Elves still alive, which is awesome, and now, just as I was saying, once they get the distance, I mean, they can start to shred some of these dwarves. So yeah, look at all those shots coming in. Focus fire on these guys. He does need to start stutter stepping. And yeah, I would focus fire, get all your volleys off here, get them off the board, and then spread out and just kite to death this Longbeard force. And all that leaves is going to be a couple Slayers and Grombrindal. So that's my hopes. So I retreat, pull back a little bit to recover, and then I've climbed up a little bit higher, but again, this is just an order of 100 points difference. The dwarves are 1,000, so we'll see how this turns out. Oh, and unfortunately he did allow these Longbeards to get into combat. Some bows going to be fired up and over, which is pretty cool that they can do that, but these sisters... Oh, actually, huh. They were able to break them. Luckily, that's going to be a great boon for them. But, yeah, not for long. Like I said, they should have been kiting far before this, and it looks like the mere presence of these incoming dwarves is going to be enough to see them off. Sisters here may get a last little volley. Ice. There it goes. There you have it, routed. But the dwarves hang on with a sliver of health. 8 men there, 1 man in this unit, just a little bit in this unit. So yeah, this could be enough for me. I've spotted another opportunity to rout some peak gate hammers. Excellent. Needed that elite unit off the board. So it looks like I'm making a little bit of a comeback. If the elves are off the board here, I'm a little bit ahead of them. That secures at least my 2nd place. And basically what it comes down to here is the point spread isn't too big. And essentially, I think whoever can win with that added win point bonus will essentially have enough to boost themselves up to 1st. So here it doesn't really matter too much on points. It's just who can come out on top at the end of the battle. Because even if the dwarves, like I said, come out with more points, but if I win and am the last man standing, well, then I should win overall in terms of points. So that's the game I'm playing. Meanwhile, over here, it looks like these sisters have done their job. They're beating these Longbeards. So I was hoping that he would now be able to turn about and perhaps even up with me, come back around, and maybe start slaughtering some of these Slayers, which I'm maybe considering allowing him to do. But for the time being, I get a little bit greedy in the sense that, you know, I could let him come over here and maybe shoot some dwarves, but there's no guarantee that that'll work out too well for me. So what I decide to do is go for the elimination. I'm going to charge over here and do a little bit of left-right micromanaging just to dodge some of those incoming shots. My guys take the long road up and over that building, and then we're going to come in here and slaughter these sisters. And I just say, okay, let's have a clean match with the leftovers of the dwarves. And then here we go. I'm going to retreat from this dwarven blob. That's all they have left. Very close point spread, under 1,000 there. And now I'm going to perhaps try and set up my my favorable position. I'm going to seek a bit of open ground. And what I'm trying to do here is draw in this dwarven blob and then basically sick them from all sides. I do have one trick yet up my sleeve. I've been kind of delaying this whole time for a little bit of mana, or magic, winds of magic I should say. And my goal here is to unleash it. So I could either get a heal off or a damage spell. So I'm going to do an explosion right in the mix of these forces and trying to obliterate the Slayers. And you'll notice, look at that. About half the Slayers did go down with that damage spell. So that was pretty awesome. So what we're left with here is going to be almost nothing. Grombrindal is basically the only thing left standing. Dragonback Slayers have 3 men left, and yeah, the other one is oh my god. So there we go. with that nice little magical explosion, it's down to basically just me with these men-at-arms, 2 of the Hippogriff Knights, and the Damsel. Okay, actually, it looks like he does still have a single Giant Slayer positioned there in the distance. But my Damsel should be able to take him out. But Grombrindal is going to be the last hope of the Dwarves. Can he pull it through? We'll have to see here. He is a pretty fierce combatant. Look at that upward blow. And that's going to be enough to destroy, cutting the jugular of that Hippogriff. Pretty scary. Very scary, I should say. So this guy down to almost nothing. So I'm going to try and cycle charge on him. Try and knock him to the ground. He's going to pop Foe Seeker. And that, with every mighty stroke, is essentially going to be killing off a single unit of my guys. So I decide, okay, pull back with my monsters. And let's let the infantry deal with him. He does have a little flash bomb effect on my guys. It's going to reduce, yeah, their melee defense. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, they were going to die from his strikes anyway. So I'm not too worried about that melee defense. I just want to chip away a bit more at his health. He's got about 2,600 health. I have 800, 1,400, and 240. So combined between all my various units, I may have enough to just rival his health. But his damage output is pretty incredible. So now my infantry are off the board. And now let's see how I can deal with this. I'm going to try and do some strikes there. Was hoping it would knock him on his butt. But he merely turns around, cleaves the breastplate on that guy, and sees that unit off. So that's pretty scary. My lady charges in, and this is what I'm looking for. Opportunities to maybe land some charges and knock him on his ass. If I can do enough of those, I should be perhaps in a position to take out his health and see him off. Pin him, and then I don't know if he can rout. This is going to be very, very close for me. So I go lining up for perhaps another strike. He does move his unit to disrupt a bit of my charge. And there does another heaving blow against my lady. So in just 2 strikes, she's going to be forced to rout. And now I decide, okay, this is it. We're going to commit to the fight one way or another. The day will be decided here. So my 2 champions left remaining out of a free-for-all with thousands of units. This is all we have left. It's a pretty epic. Ooh, and the valiant defeat there, triggered at the end. That last blow that he was going to deliver was probably enough to kill off one of my units, and he just had too much tankiness, too much resolve, and that in the end sealed it for the Dwarves. So it was pretty epic, a fight, like I said, that came down to the very last man. Very, very cool. I think I could have played that definitely a little bit better in my engagements, but the matchup against the Dwarves was just, there was not much I could do to win that with my army composition. Again, the composition wasn't great, but I wanted to do something a little bit more fun and interesting in the cityscape. Let's take a look at those stats here. Yeah, so that score boost that he got pushed him up and over with another 4K. So if it was plus 4K there at the end, that's enough to, you know, even if I was trailing a bit, that could have been enough to put me up and over in the victory. But unfortunately, I just didn't have enough to defeat Grombrindal. So let's take a look at the Dwarves here. Most of the kills actually being done by the Slayers. Yeah, murderous guys. And the Peak Gate Guard Hammerers. The rest of his units, Thunderers and Cannons and these Iron Drakes, could have done a lot more damage. And I think I did a good job of neutralizing them a decent amount. And yeah, that was maybe the saving grace for me. If he had gotten a little bit better protection on his units and cleaner engagements, I think this army could have wiped the floor with me. But we exchanged decently. A lot of this damage being put on by the Royal Hippogriff Knights, decent amount on the Questing Knights, and these Blessed Chariot Trebuchets, 159, 91, and 86 against Dwarves and Dwarven Elite units. Very good. Happy about that. And the Foot Scars traded decently. So overall, pretty well fielded by Bretonnia. Let's look at these guys. Sisters of Avalorn getting massive amounts of Chevron, mostly because they snipe constructs. The Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower did okay, but it was mostly hitting low-value units. No chevrons on him. So yeah, I think he could have been a little bit better in terms of that engagement against the Tomb Kings. He was doing really well just sitting back sniping constructs, but late game I was surprised to see his sisters tied down as they were. Had he pulled them back, scattered them, and then sniped units, I think he probably could have won the day. And then Sir Stokes here, doing pretty good. Once the Tomb Guards got in, they just cleaned house. And the only constructs that seem to have done well are going to be these Tomb Scorpions, which are always great. Anti-infantry guys with their animation that lets them kind of dig under units are always key for breaking through to the archers. If they get into that, they'll just tear up. But a lot of money sunk into units that ultimately really didn't do much. So yeah, that's it for this battle. Hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for more. I will see you in the next one, and I may be putting up some Rise of the Republic gameplay here soon. Just haven't had time to sit down and play a campaign, but perhaps I'll be able to do that in the future. Anyways, see you all in the next one. Peace out.